The monk Pindola Bharadvaja had attained enlightenment under the teachings of the Buddha, and in order to spread the Dharma in his birthplace of Kauśambī, he had returned to reside there. Because of his efforts, the seeds were sown in preparation for the spread of the Buddha's doctrine. On the outskirts of the city of Kauśambī there was a grove called Jātaka, situated on the banks of the river Ganges. This grove was the property of the king. Rows of trees lined the banks extending as far as the eye could see, and the waves of the vast river Ganges sent forth cool breezes. One day, Pindola, taking refuge from the heat of the mid-afternoon, was sitting in meditation under the luxuriantly growing trees of this grove. On this same day, King Udina came to visit this grove accompanied by his ladies-in-waiting. Having disported himself with food and musical entertainment and feeling fatigued from the entertainment, he went off by himself to rest and nap. While the king was sleeping, his ladies-in-waiting wandered from one place to another. When suddenly they saw the meditating monk, they asked for a discourse and listened earnestly to his words. After a while the king awakened from his sleep, and finding it strange that his ladies-in-waiting were not around, he started to search for them and found them clustered around the monk. Coarsened by lascivious living, the king lost all sense of judgment and ran toward the group with jealousy and anger in his heart, saying,
"Is it not most unseemly for a monk to have women around him and to be engaged in idle talk with them?"
The monk, closing his eyes, remained silent. The king, crazed by anger, took out his sword and threatened to stab the monk in the throat, but the monk still did not utter a word. Then the king broke open an anthill and threw handfuls of red ants on the body of the monk, but the monk remained calm and did not move a muscle. The king then became ashamed of his violent actions, especially when he regained his composure. He realized that this monk Pindola was the son of one of the trusted teachers at his court. Feelings of remorse came over him, and with his ladies-in-waiting he asked for forgiveness for his actions. This incident caused one of the consorts, Saṃyuktāgama by name, to place great trust in the Buddha's teachings, and it became one of the causes of King Udina's reverence for the Buddha. After the passage of a few days, the king visited Pindola at his abode in the grove and inquired with the following words.
"O great teacher, here you are a young monk. You have cut off your black hair, abandoned the pleasures of the 5 desires, and will lead a pure life throughout your life. What power makes it possible for you to do this?"
Great King, the Buddha, the eye of the world, taught us and said, "O disciples, regard an old woman as your mother, a middle-aged woman as your sister, and a young woman as your daughter. That is why though we are young in body we can abandon the 5 passions and lead a pure life."
Great teacher, a man's heart is full of craving. Even toward a woman as old as a mother, base feelings arise. Even toward a woman the age of a sister, unclean thoughts may arise. Even toward a woman as young as a daughter, licentious thoughts may arise. How can a young monk, with warm blood coursing through his veins, refrain from the 5 desires and lead a life of purity?
Great King, the Buddha, the light of the world, has taught us, saying, "This human body from the tips of the toes to the top of the head is full of filth, hair, nails, teeth, saliva, blood, pus, phlegm, perspiration, tears, fat, urine, and excrement." Knowing this is why young monks with young bodies are able to live pure lives.
Great teacher, this may be easy for a monk who has undergone a long period of spiritual training and mind control, but I think it must be very difficult for an untrained monk. While attempting to meditate on the impure, before he realizes it, his mind will be filled with the thought that it is pure. While attempting to dwell on the ugly side of a thing, before he knows it, his mind will be drawn toward the beautiful side of a thing. Therefore there must be another way for young men dikants to guard themselves in a pure manner.
Great King, the Buddha, who is all-knowing and all-seeing, taught us with the following words, "Disciples, you must guard the gates of the 5 senses. When with the eyes you see a form, when with the ears you hear a sound, when with the nose you smell a fragrance, when with the tongue you taste a flavor, when with the body you feel a sensation of contact, do not become attached to the form, do not become attached to the objects. Guard the gates of the 5 senses. Thoughts of defilement will come in unless these gates are well guarded against their entrance. This is how a young monk who is in the bloom of youth does not go to the 5 desires and lives a life of purity.
Great teacher, the teachings of the Buddha are truly praiseworthy. This must be the reason a young monk with warm blood coursing through his body can lead a pure life throughout his life. Great teacher, I know from my own experience that if I enter the harem without guarding against the portals of the 5 organs, and without guarding against the body, mouth, and mind, I immediately find myself becoming a slave to my base desires. On the other hand, if I guard against the actions of the body, mouth, and mind, I do not become a prisoner of evil desires. The teachings of the Buddha have clearly pointed this out to me.
The Buddha, continuing his travel, came to Kauśambī and entered the Goshita monastery built by the wealthy man Goshita. Magandiya, who had now become the first queen of King Udina, was waiting for her chance for revenge upon the Buddha, as she felt that he had insulted her beauty by teaching on the impurity of physical beauty. Hearing of the arrival of the Buddha, she bribed thugs in the city and had them denounce the Buddha. The disciples of the Buddha heard these slanderous attacks directed against their master, and they were greatly troubled. Ananda went to the Buddha and said, "O Lord, it is my belief that we do not have to stay in such a place as this. I believe that it is better for us to move to another place."
Ananda, if we move to another place and if such slanders should occur again, what will we do then?
"O Lord, we should again move to another town."
Ananda, in that case there will be no limit to this no matter where we go. I believe that it is better that I silently endure whatever slander I may receive and wait for it to cease. Then I can move to another place. Ananda, the Buddha is not moved by the 8 things: gain, loss, fame, slander, praise, derision, suffering, and pleasure. These slanderous attacks will cease in 7 days.
The scheme of Magandiya completely failed. The number of persons who came to believe in the Buddha increased, and the slanders against the Buddha ceased. At this time there was an adopted daughter of the rich man Goshita, Saṃyuktāgama by name, who was the king's consort at the court. Her father was a good friend of the rich man Goshita. In her childhood, the village in which she lived was beset by a severe famine, and when both of her parents died because of this famine, she was adopted by the rich man Goshita. Then she became a queen at the palace of King Udina. Because of the deep faith that her adopted father Goshita had in the Buddha, Saṃyuktāgama secretly held a deep reverence for the Buddhist Sangha. Among the ladies-in-waiting of the queen consort Saṃyuktāgama, there was a hunchback named Uthara. Her duty was to go out and buy flowers for the queen. One day as she went to buy flowers, the flower dealer told her,
"Today, I am so busy that I have no time to tend to flowers. I must make offerings to the Buddha. Will you join me in making offerings to the Buddha?"
So she went to make offerings to the Buddha and heard his discourse. Since she had a good memory, she was able to recount word for word the Buddha's sermon to the queen consort. Subsequently, both of them took refuge in the 3 treasures. Uthara would go to the monastery, hear the discourses, and recount them to the queen. Magandiya came to know about this and incessantly began to ply the king's ear with her slanderous words, saying,
Saṃyuktāgama is in love with Gautama. Uthara is being used as a messenger.
With all her feminine wiles, she poisoned the mind of the king. The king became inflamed with anger and taking up a quiver of poisoned arrows went forth and summoned Saṃyuktāgama and all her retainers to appear before him. The queen, realizing the situation, quietly restrained her mind and prepared the others for their deaths and calmly stood before the king. Everyone was expecting to see the poisoned arrows leave the bow and blood being shed, but the arrows would not leave the hands of the king, they remained immovable in the king's hands. The surprised king's face soon oozed with oily perspiration, his body started to shake like straws in the wind, froth foamed from his mouth. Finally he was barely able to plead for help in a weak, veiled voice. Saṃyuktāgama told him to aim the arrow toward the ground. When the king did so, he was able to shoot the arrow. The king was startled at this miraculous circumstance, his heart was moved by the teachings of the Buddha. Thereafter he began to visit the monastery freely and allowed the disciples of the Buddha to be invited to the inner palace. The Buddha conducted a retreat at the Goshita monastery. During the 3 months of the rainy season, Saṃyuktāgama made offerings at the monastery and invited a disciple each day to the inner palace and made offerings to him. Ananda tended to most of these offerings. One day, at this monastery, Pindola made a disclosure regarding his enlightenment, saying,
My worldly life has ended, I have fulfilled all the pure practices. I have done all I had to do. Henceforth, for me there is no samsara that leads to illusion.
The Buddha explained these words of Pindola to his disciples, saying,
Disciples, Pindola has made profession of his enlightenment by the three practices of right mindfulness, meditation, and wisdom while declaring, My worldly life has ended. I have fulfilled all the pure practices.
Pindola expressed his happiness in the following verse.
In life's great tapestry, where wisdom weaves, no thread more vital than the precepts leaves. As food sustains my mortal frame, I seek, with humble hands, the sustenance I speak. Yet, to these morsels, no attachment binds, no craving stirs within my seeking mind. Like dirt upon the path, the offerings lie, small arrows failing to my heart to fly. Though piety from wicked souls may spring, its essence fades, like echoes on the wing. For true devotion's flame, untainted, bright, burns pure and clear, dispelling inner night.
After the termination of the retreat, Saṃyuktāgama made an offering of 500 pieces of cloth to Ananda, who divided the gift among the members of the Sangha. King Udina, hearing of this, was greatly surprised. He visited Ananda and reproached him, saying,
Is it not greedy for monks to accept such a large offering? And, great teacher, what are you going to do with all of these garments?
Great king, I shall divide them among the disciples whose garments are torn.
What is going to happen to the torn garments?
The torn garments will be made into bed covers.
What are you going to do with the old bed covers?
They will be made into pillowcases.
What are you going to do with the old pillowcases?
They will be made into cushions.
What are you going to do with the old cushions?
They will be made into washcloths for wiping the feet.
What are you going to do with the old washcloths?
They will be made into dry cloths.
What are you going to do with the old dry cloths?
Great king, we shall rip the dry cloths into small pieces and mix them with dirt and clay and use them for plastering the walls of houses.
Great teacher, how wonderful! The disciples of the Buddha truly know how to make use of material goods.
The king left greatly impressed. Magandiya became more and more exasperated and irritable till she could not stand it any longer. All her schemes of slander had not borne any results. The king's heart was now turned toward the Buddha. Her determination now was directed toward Saṃyuktāgama. Contriving with her uncle, who was employed at the palace, and another evil person, Magandiya, during the time the king was away from the country, had them set fire to the residence of Saṃyuktāgama. Saṃyuktāgama, who had directed and encouraged her crying attendants who were trapped in the conflagration, remained calm and composed. Holding on to the Buddha's teachings in her heart, she gave up her life for the truth. Uttara, her hunchback servant, also perished in the flames. King Udina, who became livid with rage at this tragedy, had Magandiya and her accomplices burnt to death. The Buddha mourned the death of those noble women and praised Saṃyuktāgama as the foremost in compassion among all the women and Uttara as the foremost in hearing the Dharma. One day the Buddha went into the suburbs of Kauśambī and stood on the banks of the river Ganges. Seeing large logs floating down the river, he said to his disciples,
Disciples, do you see the large logs floating in the water and being washed away by the current? Disciples, if those logs do not come close to the banks, do not sink in the middle of the stream, do not get on the two banks, do not get taken by men, do not get taken by gods, do not get engulfed by whirlpools, and do not rot from within, then those logs will enter and remain in the ocean. Disciples, it is the same with you, you will enter nirvana and remain in nirvana. Why is this so? Because right views lead us to nirvana.
One disciple asked the Buddha,
Buddha, what is the meaning of the two banks? What is the meaning of sinking in the midstream, getting onto the bank, being taken by people, gods, or whirlpools, and rotting from within?
Disciples, this bank is the five organs, the other bank is the external objects. To sink in the midstream is to sink in the pleasures of desire. To get onto the banks is self-pride. To be taken by people is the monks intermingling with lay people, they enjoy happiness and sadness together. When the lay people rejoice, the monk rejoices, when the lay people suffer, the monk suffers. They become companions in all things, this is what is meant by being taken by people. To be taken by gods is to make a vow to be born in the world of the gods and to practice toward that goal, hoping that by the practice of precepts, asceticism, and pure deeds, one can become a god. To be taken in by whirlpools means to be taken in by the 5 desires. To rot from within means that, although one is a disciple of the Buddha, one's nature is bad, one does not follow the precepts, one does evil and does not do good, and covers up one's deeds, one is not a monk, but puts on the appearance of a monk, and one is rotten inside.
At this time a cowherd by the name of Nanda was standing at a place not too distant from the Buddha. Nanda addressed the Buddha, saying,
O Buddha, I shall strive to free myself from all obstructions and strive to follow the path. O Buddha, I should like to be with you and become your disciple.
Nanda, then you had better go and return the cattle to your master.
O Buddha, these cows will return by themselves because of their love for their children.
Nanda, it is better that you go and return the cattle to your master.
So the cowherd Nanda went to return the cattle to his master and, returning again to the Buddha, asked that he be allowed to become a disciple. This wish was granted, and Nanda, after undertaking practice, before long attained enlightenment. Again, one day the Buddha said thus while at the Goshita monastery.
Disciples, suppose there is a man who catches 6 different species of animals and ties them together with a strong rope. The animals caught are a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a fox, and a monkey. He ties each one of these animals with a strong rope and ties the ropes together and leaves the animals to their own devices. At this time each of the 6 species seeks to return to his place of abode, the snake to a mound, the crocodile to water, the bird to the sky, the dog to a village, the fox to a cemetery, and the monkey to a grove. These 6 creatures will struggle against each other and become fatigued, each will finally be pulled in the direction of the strongest one and come under his control. Disciples, in the same way, if one does not contemplate the filth of the body and does not practice the 3 meditations on the defilements of the body, if one is remiss in these practices, the eye is attracted toward those forms that it likes and hates those that it does not like. It is the same with the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. They are attracted to things that are agreeable and are not attracted to things that are disagreeable. Disciples, this is called the absence of restraint. Disciples, what is meant by restraint? When one sees forms with his eyes, one does not become attached to those that are pleasant, neither does one become angry at those forms that are unpleasant. One resides in the meditation on the body and in the 4 boundless minds of compassion, mercy, joy, and non-attachment. One then truly knows the deliverance of the mind and the deliverance of wisdom, thus one gets away from all evil thoughts that may arise. It is the same with sound, fragrance, taste, and sensation. With the mind one comes to perceive all things, does not become attached to pleasant things, does not become angry at unpleasant things, and resides in the meditation on the body in the 4 boundless minds. Then one truly comes to know the deliverance of the mind and the deliverance of wisdom, thus one destroys all evil things that may arise. Disciples, creatures bound to a pole at first strive to return to their respective abodes, but eventually they become tired and stand or sit or lie down near the pole. Disciples, in the same way, if a person practices the meditation on the body, his eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind will not be influenced by the various states in which they may be. The meditation on the body is like a firm pole or tree. So you must practice meditation on the body.
Thus the Buddha remained a long time at Kauśambī, then he returned to Shrevasti.